I mean, it's just so cool. It's totally changed the culture of our company. So the culture of our company now is that people expect to have people coming in to pick up instruments. We try very hard to get everybody in the store involved in that process. And they said, I was in Hy-Vee standing in line and the guy saw my shirt and thanked me for what we do. And I just want to tell you that I feel so good coming to work because of what we do.
So we'll kick it off. Yeah, this is awesome for a number of reasons. One of the things we talk about, from time to time in this group is about how important it is for a company and a team now to have a sense of purpose, to recruit people and to build a high-performing team. That's what folks are looking for, is a sense of purpose in their work and in what they do. And so I think it's really amazing how you've woven that into the Meyer music business and created a broader sense of purpose for your team. But I also wanted to just go back to the beginning of that entrepreneurial journey. Walk us through the history of what inspired and built Meyer Music and what's brought you to where you are today. And as you talked about, this is an unusual year. What are the things Meyer Music is doing to adapt to the changes in business we've seen this year? And then maybe we'll go into that sense of purpose with Band of Angels.
Yeah, well, that's great. Meyer Music is really a great entrepreneurial story that I love to tell, and was long before, well, not long before, but was even before I was born. So, we've been in business now since March 4th of 1966, so in our 55th year. Coming up here, or I guess we're in it. It was started by my mom and dad. They were both school teachers in the Kansas City, Missouri public schools after graduating from what was Central Missouri State University, and will always be that to me because that's where I graduated from too, but is now UCM. And my mom was teaching 40 private piano music students and teaching 5 all inner city, all minority schools, beginning band programs. My dad was a history and accounting teacher at Paseo High School. And they decided that, they wanted to do something during the summer to earn some extra money because they weren't working because they were teachers. So they were either going to open a Dairy Queen or a music store. And luckily, it was the music store. I think our belt lines are much, much happier because it was a music store. But, it's a crazy story because here they were, young entrepreneurs, and they could not get a loan from any bank to start this music store in a little town called Blue Springs, Missouri, which at that time was 2,500 people, which is now about 65,000 people. And they were living in an attic, which is not, it was probably 400 square feet, 500 square feet, with tilted ceilings and everything. And the guy that they were living with, my dad was talking to him, and he said, we want to start a music store, but no bank. They're laughing us out of the office. And the guy said, well, how much do you think you'd need? And he said, well, I think $6,000 was the loan we're looking for to get it going. And the guy said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll loan you the money. And so my mom and dad borrowed $6,000 from a guy. They were living in his attic on an interest-only loan to start Meyer Music, which, today is 3 locations and covers a 100-mile area around Kansas City. We work with 60 school districts and do band and orchestra instrument rental, support for school music programs, music lessons in our stores, and things like that. There are 5 Meyers, actually 6 now, believe it or not. There are 5 Meyers still active in the business. My mother and my father are still there at 81 years old, kicking along and screaming because they don't want to let go. And then I have an older brother, Tom, who's about 5 years older than me. I have a younger sister, Mitzi, who's about 6 years younger than me, and she runs our North Kansas City location. Tom runs our Blue Springs location, which is the biggest of the three. It's about 35,000 square feet, and does all of our distribution and supply for the other two locations. And we were just a small mom and pop family music store the whole time I was growing up. My dad used to load cases of soda pop into the back of the van, drive them up to the football field on game nights, on Friday nights, so that every kid coming off the marching band field could have an ice cold Coke. So we really kind of grew from that just small community. Blue Springs at the time, it was a 2-lane road down the middle of Blue Springs, and there wasn't much there but a couple of little restaurants and a truck stop. So it's been quite a deal. I don't think I ever knew that we were as small as we were growing up. I just assumed we were this awesome thing, and it wasn't until I graduated college that I got started in it and realized that wow, this was a really neat place to grow up. There was a room, and if I go too long on the stories, Randy, please cut me off. But we grew up in a store. There was a little room in the basement that we would take one school bus. We lived on the other side of town. We'd take one school bus to school and then a different school bus home, and the different school bus would drop us off in the parking lot of the music store. And so then we'd go in, and my mom would fix a full meal every morning, put it all in Tupperware. For any moms, you know that that's not an easy gig, and reheat and redo the whole thing. And at 4:30 every night, we would go downstairs in that room, and we had dinner. And so our dinner table was Meyer Music. That was where all the biggest memories probably of my life are. And we spent a ton of time there. I think that'd probably be, child laws now on the thing, but at that point, that was just, that was the way we could be together. And so my mom and dad just worked incredibly hard, and went through a lot of ups and downs, in the late 70s, early 80s, when interest rates went up to 18 and 21%, they almost lost the business, but borrowed some money and rebounded and just kept grinding and working hard. So then I came out of college with a degree actually in graphic arts, and my brother came out of college with a degree in public relations and marketing. And neither of us really liked what it was that we were doing. I was selling printing, and was never a great student in college. Truth be told, I almost didn't make it through college, but I pulled it back together at the end and found my purpose. And that was kind of, I loved the art and the graphics of things. And that has really played well into the marketing of Meyer Music. So my brother and I both came back into the business in about 1990. At that time, we dealt with 1.5 school districts, which was Blue Springs, Missouri, and a little bit of Independence. And we just decided that we would start on a growth pattern. And I don't know that we had the smarts to know that that was this big thought out plan. But mom and dad had always said that they would love to have 3 locations. And really just cover the entire metro area. And then we just kind of started calling on schools. We did a couple of quick things that all of our competitors were not willing to do, and saw pretty early on that there was this transition away from kind of owning things to renting and leasing things. And so we shifted our business to really focus on that and started hitting school districts with better options than they had had before. And it was just kind of a crazy run. From there, as all you business owners know, you've got cash flow problems, and you're trying to grow. But, in our case, we were growing on things that we were spending hundreds of dollars on and only collecting $20 in rent on, and so there was a long cycle to kind of crest that hill. But we did and hung in there, and we're having a killer business. Things were going good. Schools were kicking. And then this little thing came out called the internet. And all of a sudden, all that shopping and in-store traffic that you saw did not come in store anymore. And so we had to shift our business there, and try and find a way to be an online presence in a world that's very hard to be online, because music is so much about touching and feeling and hearing. So we're able to navigate that, and things continue to grow and go. And then this crazy thing happened called the housing crisis meltdown in 2008, and here we were again. But what was crazy was that we were very well positioned at that time, because we had transitioned from a owning to more of a renting leasing type of position. We were actually positioned perfectly for that crisis. And so during that crisis, we saw our business go up about 30% while everybody else was crashing. When the others were crashing, that gave us the opportunity to acquire some key employees from other businesses that were going out of business and had accounts. And so we continued to grow by not acquiring the company, because the company was failing, but the employee had a really strong roster of accounts, and so we grew that way. So that kind of takes us up to present day. 3 stores, 75 employees, 150 contract employees that work for us teaching music lessons. And it's been pretty awesome. Couldn't be more blessed.
I think you just laid out a whole master's class in business adapting. When you think about all of the things you just ran through there are a ton of lessons learned when you look at the number of great brands that don't adapt and go away. You think about great brands of 20 years ago, the Sears and the Toys R Us and the Circuit Cities and all of those things that are gone because they got locked into a way. And it seems unique that you guys have flexed sometimes with things, like going to renting instruments. I'm sure that was a huge capital burden right out of the gate for a model that didn't exist.
Yeah, it was extremely huge. And my mother, who was our controller, and I credit with really putting us, keeping the reins on, because as we all know, you can want to really, really grow fast. And so we've seen a number of companies grow themselves right out of business. And so really being intentional with our capital up front and taking very little, I think that's another thing that I've seen today, especially in the entrepreneurial community. You can really tell the entrepreneurs from the posers, because the entrepreneurs, they're in it to build something great. The posers are in it to build something that they can flip and sell, which is not a bad strategy. I think that's fine, but their strategy is that they're gonna hire other people to do it, and they're gonna take the salary, and they're gonna be the boss when they need to be in the trench grinding and getting it going. But the other thing that we really transitioned to, and I really didn't cover, was you mentioned brand. And I specifically remember sitting in a meeting. This was where my graphics background and my brother's public relations background really gave us a big head start. But I remember sitting in a meeting with my mom and dad, and I said, look, we need to stop selling products and start selling Meyer music. And they were like, well, you just need to get out there and help the customers, I said, well, no, I will do that, and I think we should. But Mom, what you don't realize right now is with the location and coverage that we have, Meyer Music is a brand. It is becoming a brand, is a brand that people trust, and we need to work harder on trying to support and push our brand as opposed to pushing other people's brands of products that we sell. Because the reality is those manufacturers, and in our world, that's what we have to deal with. Those people can change their mind on a dime. If the CEO changes and their strategy changes, well, then guess what? They change their network and you change too. So we have also really worked super hard to create a brand where it doesn't matter what we're selling. We're selling Meyer music. We wanted to be the Topsy's popcorn, the Tivol Jewelers. We wanted to be that of Kansas City. And so we really focus a lot of our time and energy on brand as opposed to product. You know, if they trust your brand and you deliver on your brand and you deliver on your promises, then the products, I don't want to say become irrelevant, but they certainly don't, you know, it doesn't matter as much if you deliver on your word and you've created this trust with your customer and your brand is strong. So that's where my brother and I really focus. And I don't talk as much about my younger sister, Mitzi, because she's more of the, you know, controller bean counter-ish type of mindset, but my brother and I are definitely much more in the marketing side of the world. I really focus on process. He really is very creative with ideas of how we're going to shift and pivot and things like that. And then what I do is take that idea and figure out, okay, well, what's the process by which we're going to be able to scale that across this 100-mile area and deliver the McDonald's hamburger consistently every place we do it. And so, so those are just kind of the things that are kind of floating around in my head most of the time. Is more about brand than it is the other product side.
Yeah, I love where you're going with that, and there are a lot of businesses I know that can learn from that. That, you know, maybe they are subject to some big brand that's in the umbrella, but to be able to build that relationship, and that's where I wanted to take it, is how much of that sense of what you're calling brand is really that lifetime generation you build with a family, that you start with one child, and then you get the brother and the sister and the next brother and the sister, and now you're embedded in that family for 20 or 25 years.
Yeah, well, for sure. And I mean, that was early on a part of our strategy, is that we would see the first child, you know, at age 5 for piano lessons. And then we would probably see them again when they were 9 to 10 for beginning band or orchestra in a school. And then we would see them again when they started to do well in middle school and upgrade their instrument to move on into high school and start thinking about college. So we really have a pretty well-defined sales time of between age 5 and 13, 14 years old. At 14, they become too smart for, you know, anybody. They know everything at that point, and that's when the world of the internet really becomes their oyster, and they go out and start experimenting, doing. And we just realized very early on that we could not compete in an e-commerce world. It's just also kind of funny in the e-commerce world, and I hope I'm not jumping around too much, but you know, where most people's funnel, they're taking the Amazon approach to the funnel, which is this, you know, I have to have everything. And what me and my brother and sister really did was take the funnel and start to go like this and really get into what it is that we can do consistently. It's a very limited product, but we also took that and kind of made it dynamic. So it looks like that we have a lot more stuff, but when you really start digging in, I mean, you're talking about a very small channel of stuff that we work in. And then we focused more on customizing for the school through our e-commerce side and our website. So if you go on, you can pick a school district and you can pick a director. We have the director's name in there. We have, we know the products that guy likes. And they're pretty consistent across, but there's slight variations. So we really focused more on making the school the part that people felt like, okay, now if they come to our site and they see their school logo on there and they see their director's name, then they know that we know, and it goes back to the trust. And then it's more about the brand and the trust. So.
As you look at this journey of adapting and changing, what's changing now with learn from home, lessons from home, school from home? How are you guys responding to that?
Well, I think sometimes it's better be lucky than good, I guess. But I think that you make your own luck. As luck would have it, and by the way, I forgot to mention one Meyer that's in the thing, and that is my son John has now come into the business, and John is, about 2 years into generation 3. So we hope that he will really enjoy the business and want to do that. He's loving it right now. And he's kind of exactly like me. He grew up in the same thing. About 2 years ago, we really started looking at our website, and there's a lot of PCI compliance issues that were starting to really make it difficult to transact e-commerce. And so for the last year and a half, we've spent a tremendous amount of time on our website, and we also figured out that we wanted to transition away from, believe it or not, paper contracts were still the easiest and fastest way to do this transaction because there were so many technology pieces that had to fit together. Well, as I started looking at the technology, I'm always thinking technology and kind of trying to keep up on that part, and it felt like that they had all kind of merged and we had come to a place where it could work. So we had a year and a half ago started into a process of transitioning everything paper onto tablets and becoming completely digital. Well, that then integrated that with our website so that whether you come into the store or you go in through our website, the experience that you have is the exact same if you're looking for an instrument for your child. And that has proven out like perfectly right now because we had just redone our website to be totally touchless and integrated. We do free delivery to schools. We can do free delivery to home. You can do in-store pickup. You can do curbside pickup with us. So we had spent a lot of time just trying to make our business better by going into this tablet situation. When you're writing 6,000 to 7,000 contracts a year, and you talk about data entry points of 20 minutes plus on the back end of that, 20 to 30 minutes of back end work, it doesn't take very long for you to justify the cost of this change. And so we had invested in that. It's a pretty substantial upfront investment. But now customer can come into the store and the whole transaction can be completely touchless with a masked employee and a 6-foot distance on the other side of the counter. They do the whole transaction. Either we can sanitize and wipe the tablet, they can fill it out on the tablet, and then give it back to us. We wipe it and we're good. Or they can just recite us the information. We put it in, the case is open with the instrument, the kid can see it, and they are gonna, they just walk right out with it. And we're doing that same process in schools. So we were honestly set up perfectly for a touchless society. And it did take a little while for, when you have 3 stores, to get everybody's head in the game because, we have one in Kansas and one in Missouri. And when you were watching television and trying to go through the news cycle, it was completely, there's a lot of mixed messaging going on of how serious things were. But it kind of all comes back to brand. I kept preaching, we need to be on brand. We need to be consistent in brand across the locations so that wherever people are seeing us, they're seeing a consistent brand. And so that's really what we focused in on, and it's worked out really well. So now the schools not starting music programs, that's a massive hurdle for us. And I don't want to lead you to believe that this is not going to be tough for us this year. It's going to be very hard. We'll probably see a reduction of somewhere about 50% of what we would normally do. But luckily, we've been very financially smart and are living in a, with a strong company with a strong balance sheet, and it's something that we can withstand. What I've kept telling my son throughout this whole thing is keep your eyes open because there's going to be an opportunity somewhere. And that opportunity is probably going to come from a competitor who's highly leveraged and can't withstand it. And so that's where we will then, just like in 08, started to acquire, different maybe assets of people and utilize that. So that's kind of really where my head is right now with all of it.
We're starting to get some questions in, and if you have questions, type them in the chat, and I will unmute you. Kent was happy to see another successful mule from Central Missouri come along. Ryan, I've unmuted you if you want to unmute.
Yeah. So, Mike, my question was, what are the challenges of running a business with family? And is it difficult to separate business and life, or do you prefer to run them contiguously? And the reason I asked too is that my father-in-law owns a company up north, and he's got a lot of family members in it. And it's like whenever they get together at family functions, all they talk about is business. And just didn't know what that was like in your world, and if that's something you prefer, or whatever it may be.
That's an excellent question. And the truth is, I wouldn't want it any other way. It is now, I would say this, it's much easier when you separate the family members by 45 miles. And we aren't sitting next to each other every day. But the truth is that we do talk business all the time. It is the common thread that we all have. And now I'm even finding, it because my son lives here with us. He's engaged and is going to get married in April, and wanted to, be smart, save money ahead of time. So he's living here. So now every night, he walks through that door and he's like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened today. Or, we got to think about this. And so at a point where kind of in my life where I'm going, I kind of like to just go home and turn it off a little bit. But so there's a couple of things I would say that have been fantastic for us. First of all, we all grew up in it. I told you, the school bus dropped us off there. So being together was not in a business situation was never a problem. But when we started coming in as adults and managers and now owners, the discussions became quite different. But the one thing that never changed was that we do not talk over each other at meetings. That we do not curse in meetings. We do not say personal things about people's families. We don't do those things that you might do at home while we are there. And I think that's been a big thing. My dad is a very good rudder on the ship. And what's funny is I think of all three of the kids now, I have kind of become that person that people call to calm everybody down. But I think that's very helpful. Now, my mother, on the other side, crying in a meeting was pretty common, because it was growth, it was change. She doesn't dig change a lot. So I think it's finding what each of you does well and respecting that. And not becoming frustrated and personal because that person doesn't think like you. We legit every Sunday for the first 20 years, we all worked together, and then every Sunday we all went to my parents' house for swimming and lunch. And now mom and dad are getting older, so we're not doing that as much. We have our own families, but the family component. There's nobody I'd rather be at my side than my brother and my sister when I'm scared about going into a competitive situation and I need somebody to lean on. There's no better wealth of knowledge than a mother and father who have had 55 years of a lot of ups and downs to call when because when that person calls you the first time and says, I'm going to sue your ass and I'm going to own Meyer Music, you want to call your mom. And luckily I get to call my mom, or my dad. And so, so that doesn't happen very often, by the way. But in any business, you're going to have people that you don't agree with, and you're going to have problems. And so I think for us, the family dynamic is always just keeping it business at the store. And we have spirited debate, but it does not get personal. And I also have a sister-in-law who's working in the business, and she's a very different personality. And we don't always see eye to eye. So, and then my parents always said, keep the in-laws out. That if you can, keep them out of the decision-making. You, the family, the blood relatives, they're the ones that make those decisions. And, that certainly can change, but that's kind of been what we've dealt with.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, I just made that comment because I did go to school with Tom and did visit the store in Blue Springs many times. And I do know the truck stop on the 2-lane highway in Blue Springs. So, it was a little flashback. I went to the real Blue Springs High School, not one with Northeast, West, or South designation. So I do thank you for the story. It's been very helpful to hear the entire story, whereas I just picked it up in the late 70s through the mid 80s or so when I was in high school. But thank you. It's been a great story, and it's good to see you. And do please tell Tom hello for me.
I will do that. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I think you've done something. You've been for a long time. I don't know if you remember on Facebook early on, you always get those you're from if lists, and I'm reading that you're from Blue Springs if and if there was a truck stop on 7 Highway, and these things. And the other one is my parents. We always had this sign up on the front of the store. It said pianos on sale. And my dad, I said, Dad, should we take that sign down at some point? And he said, well, you never know who's going to drive by there and see that there's a piano in there. And I said, and so on Facebook it said, you grew up in Blue Springs if you can ever remember a time in your life when pianos were not on sale at Meyer Music. So I thought that was pretty funny.
I think we even lived in the same neighborhood as Tom did after I got married and over in Waterfield, if I remember.
Yep. He's still there.
Right. Thanks again for the story.
Mm-hmm.
Marilyn, I've unmuted you.
Okay. I agree. I think your story is phenomenal. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and transparency about the fact that it isn't, 100% great ride, because we know that it's not. My question, I'd like to know a little bit more about your sales force. And I also would like to know how you've kept them engaged during the COVID-19.
So, the good news is the sales force early on was the 5 of us. We were really the key people and doing most of it. And it wasn't until probably the last 10 years that we really start to see that sales force expand into other things. That is a big challenge right now, because that is a big area of our business that's struggling with people not coming in. Your salespeople are not doing as much. So we are actively just trying to make sure that they are prospecting. The good news is when we're dealing in a payments type of world, you have a whole database of people to data mine and go after. And so the one thing that we just continue to preach to them, and we're starting to preach to the community now, is that the music doesn't stop just because the world has paused. And these kids still are going to play. They still need to practice. They still are passionate about it. And those families that find it important are still going to do it. So we've really worked hard on them to be out there more in the community and prospecting. My son John is also one of the salespeople now, and so he spent a couple of weeks, believe it or not, just literally sitting down and writing handwritten letters to all of the school districts, every church, every private school, and every school administrator that he could find on the internet. He wrote a handwritten letter to, telling them that we do pianos, and if they needed any help tuning the pianos in their school, he would be able to do that. And a lot of times you go in, we just ran into a situation with Fort Scott, Kansas yesterday, where they got the letter, they called and they said, we don't need the piano tune, but we need to get rid of some. I said, okay, well, I don't, that's kind of a long ways. Well, what would you suggest if we were trying to get away from our old acoustic piano for these rooms and we're looking for something with less maintenance? I said, well, everybody's moving to the electronics and those things. We certainly sell those. So we were able to sell them 3 electronic pianos and pick up 5 ones that they wanted to get rid of. And that all came from a letter, and it came from also the relationship that we have with our road teams. We have 7 educational representatives that call on every one of those schools in that 60-mile or that 60 school district 100-mile area every week. And once again, we kept preaching to them. The schools are, even though they are pausing and it's online, they are not stopping. They still need you. They still need to see your face. And so, even if it's you drive around your route, and you sit in the back parking lot on FaceTime and FaceTime them through the door. And if they need something, they sit outside the back door and you go pick it up and bring it in. So we just said, you know, keep the hammer down, guys. We don't stop just because things are a little challenging right now.
Yeah, I think the things you just spoke about with that maintaining that relationship and that presence ties into Chris's next comment. Chris, I've unmuted you.
Oh, thank you, Randy. Boy, other than just commending the whole Meyer Music team, I had nothing else to add. But yes, we're not far from we're in 135 location. We go there. My daughter was just there Monday, and we love it. And my comment really was around in a virtual world where my daughter would be content spending plenty of time on her iPad or whatever. That having some place to go where she can interact with people and get some hands-on, non-academic experience. It's just great. It's drumming, especially for her, is great because it allows her to expend some energy. But overall, we just think Meyer Music is fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. You know, one of the other things, back to kind of Marilyn's and Christopher's point, you may have already or getting a text message from us here shortly, but that's another thing where my son came to me and said, you know, our reviews, the only people that review you typically are people that are irritated with you. And, you know, when you're dealing in a payments world where people don't make their payments all the time, a lot of those comments come from those people who didn't make their payments. And so, so he has embarked on this you know, text to review campaign. And Marilyn, I think that kind of goes back to what you said. We've shifted there. I mean, so we are focusing right now on trying to build our reviews and our positive reviews and our ratings on Google and things, so that when this all undoes, you know, we're sitting on top. And that's 100% John Meyer. I can't take any credit for that. I mean, he did that all on his own, but he saw the value there and that. So we're instituting a texting program where people, if they pick up an instrument, just like if you went to Best Buy, you know, you're getting a text message saying, hey, thank you for picking up your instrument. If you were happy with your experience, please review us. So those are the things that you can be doing when, you know, the rest of this is all happening, and then you come out of it and you're sitting there smiling because you're like, man, I'm glad I did that. So let's say be thinking about that. How do you build your customer brand? How do you build your, you know, your customer engagement? How do you get positive things happening on your site? Because that's going to push you up. You're going to be in the search better. Spend a lot of time on SEO. You know, that's very big right now too.
Mike, it's nice to connect with you. I actually know your wife, Jonna. I've known her for years. Actually, Beth Abersold is my business partner, so I know Jonna very well, and she actually was a client years ago. So it's fun to hear your whole story. I hadn't heard the whole story before. Your brand is great. I use your Overland Park store for my kids, and I've always kind of wondered, you know, you have such a great brand in Kansas City. Have you all ever thought about doing it beyond Kansas City, or maybe some of a more of a regional or national basis and expanding the brand?
I think thought, but not, well, first of all, and we were just with the Abersolds the other night, so Beth is wonderful, and John just left to go to work. She's got a really interesting entrepreneurial story too, a little bit, because of her journey in getting a degree in music and now being the chief people officer.
Oh,
for
that's
technology.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So she'd be somebody interesting to talk to too. But you know, I think that right now we feel like that we are building the infrastructure for Kansas City, and one of the challenges that you run into in our business is that in order to really grow outside of Kansas City, you would almost have to do a roll-up strategy as opposed to just opening and franchising and expanding around. Because, as I said, we do deal with manufacturers. They do have territories and dealer agreements that,
Okay.
so it's not as easy for us just to go and pop a store in Wichita or Salina or Colorado Springs or wherever it would be. Because those things are already in place. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that won't be down the road in a potential piece. That actually kind of ties in a little bit with Band of Angels, which we haven't quite gotten to yet. But Band of Angels, there is a national strategy for Band of Angels. And I think that learning that through doing that will help us if we ever do decide to expand. But I think if most of the time in our business, when companies are expanding, and we've seen a number of them try and go national, and it's really failed miserably because of these types of dealer situations, so it's something that we thought about, but I think we would think more about if there was a store that was close, that was starting to get an owner that was going to retire, they have an established group of accounts. That's the other thing, is we're working with school districts, and those relationships with those schools are really, really difficult and strong. And it took us 25 years to get those number of schools that we got. So the idea that you would just pop a store down and then you'd go in and that school would say, great, and they'd dump their old guy, it's not necessarily as easy in our world because of those franchise agreements.
Let's transition over to that story here. This is a great place to stop and talk about that, not just about Band of Angels, but about that sense of purpose, and where did you come up with that idea to weave that in to the business, something broader than just selling or leasing music, but how do you go make a difference with the talent you've got? I think it's an awesome story.
It has been an amazing ride, and it's my favorite thing to talk about. My wife's, we're getting ready to go to the lake this weekend. She said the one thing you can't talk about is Band of Angels at the lake this weekend. So as I talk about it all the time. But I think that any good invention, what do they say, comes from a pain point. And our pain point was this: the teacher at the school goes into the fourth grade classroom, and they get the kids all excited about music, and they show them the instruments, and they let them touch and feel them. And pre-COVID, they would let them blow on a mouthpiece and make a sound. And that kid would come home and be all excited. And they'd say, Mom and Dad, I want to be in band or orchestra, and all I got to do is get an instrument. We just go down and we just need to go rent an instrument. I can be in band. And the parent that can do it says, okay, let's go down to the store and we'll get you a trumpet. And I'm excited. This is cool. I didn't play. Or, the parent that can't gets a look of fear in their eye. Excuse me. And they, they're like, I cannot afford another thing. And how am I going to disappoint my child yet again? And so they would do two things. They would, first of all, they would show up at the school where we were to help rent instruments, and they would just see if they could get it. And we knew they weren't going to pay. We could tell, you ask a couple simple qualifying questions and you can get a pretty good sense whether a person's can afford to do this or not. And so we had to sit across from them and say, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to help you because they're like, well, can I rent this and write you a 3-week post-dated check, and well, no, we can't, or I don't have a bank account, or I don't have a credit card, or anything like that, And there were a lot of factors that they were dealing with that we knew that they weren't going to pay. And so if we gave them an instrument, well, that's great. We solved their problem today. The kid's happy, but we've created another problem for ourselves and a traumatic event for a child 30 days from today when we have to go out and repossess it. And that's an uncomfortable word to say, but it's true, and it's part of business that you have to go back and get things that people don't pay for. And so for a long time, we just had to tell them no. And then the ones that did kind of get by us, we had to go the collections route and go get our equipment back. And so about 10 years ago, I was approached by Fox 4 Television. And I thought about this because I'd heard of other dealers across the United States doing something similar, but just on a real micro scale. Like they would keep 5 or 10 instruments at their store. And if somebody came in and it's a hardship case, they'd just give an instrument. Well, I had a good relationship with Carrie Hibbler at Fox 4 Television as the community relations person there. And she called me one day and said, hey, would you come down and talk through some ideas with us? We want to start a community program, but we don't know what to do. But we're doing a lot of stories on the news of the arts being cut, and we'd like for it to do with the arts. And I said, okay. Well, she was my friend, and I thought, oh, she's going to try and sell me an advertising package to sponsor a segment on the thing. But you know what? I'll go down and I'll talk to her. And I went down, and legit, there was 3 of us in a conference room, and she said, well, here's what we're thinking. We'll start this fund, and we'll collect a bunch of money, and then if a school needs new band uniforms, we'll just buy them the band uniforms or sets for the musical. And I said, well, okay. I've been involved with Rotary for 25 years. I've done a ton of fundraising through that. I was like, I think you got a couple of issues that you might not know. And that first is collecting the money is not going to be as easy as you think. And then secondly, I said, I don't think you have any idea how expensive band uniforms or sets for a musical are. I mean, you're talking a small school like St. Thomas Aquinas with 40 kids. It was $26,000 for their band uniforms. You know, so I just said, but you know, I have this idea. There's a ton of people that over 45 years my family has sold an instrument to, and they're probably sitting under a bed or in a closet because the kids have graduated high school and gone to college. And they're not using it anymore. If we could just get those people to bring them in, Meyer Music has all the facilities to fix them. We have the network of school districts that we work with and the road reps to call and get them into the hands of the kids. And I sit right across from the families every year, and they tell me they can't do it. And I have to tell them I can't do it. I can connect those 2 points. So I can take, if I can get Marilyn's clarinet, I can connect it with Adam, you know, and I just got to get the clarinet. So they were like, you know what, we love it. And I said, okay, awesome. I said, I would love to explore it further, but I said, I'm not interested in doing anything until you all come out to our store and tour our stores, and I can show you what's going to be involved in making this happen. So they said, okay. They came out, we toured the store, and they said, thank God we did this, because if we had people showing up at the TV station with stuff, first of all, half of it's broken and doesn't work, and the second part is we don't know what to do with it even if we did. So did get it. So it was a really, really great relationship, but I would also say that in anything, taking a step back so that both parties have a clear understanding of what you're about to get into is a really smart move. And they have just been the most amazing partner you could possibly have. There is no money that exchanges hands between Meyer Music and Fox 4 Television. It is completely a community-based project. Their part is the mouthpiece and voice, and our part is the execution and delivery on the back end. And so what we do is we collect used music instruments from people who have them sitting in the closet, and we provide those free of charge to students in financial need, so they can begin in a beginning band and orchestra program. We thought, Carrie said to me, how many instruments do you think you could get the first year? And I said, I think if we got 50 instruments, that would be really crazy. We could do so much good. We could help so many kids. And we ended up getting 300. So we have now collected over 6,000 instruments. Between third party, about 50% of what we get is not usable. So that immediately takes it down to 3,000. We have given away about 20, I think it's just under 2,400 instruments now to kids in schools over the last 10 years at no cost. About 3 years into the, about 3 years into the project, 2 years in, I was sitting at Central Missouri State at the marching band contest, and I was talking to the director of the music school, and I asked him about the music camp. And I'd also had this kind of idea floating in my head, but I said, well, how's the music camp going? Because I went to school there, and I went to music camp there in middle school. And he said, you know, it's getting really hard to keep it going. The school keeps raising the cost, and, you know, kids have a lot of options. And so we don't know. And I said, well, and it clicked in my head. I said, you know what? I had just given out 250 instruments to kids in financial need that could never afford to go to music camp. If I could just go out and raise the money, I could send those kids to camp. I could keep the camp going, and I could keep the teachers employed during the summer and keep them earning extra money too. And everybody wins. And so, well, now all I got to do is go get the money. So luckily, as my wife would tell you, I don't have a problem asking for money for people. It's something I like doing, and it is my belief that people are just waiting to be asked, and I'm not going to deny them the opportunity to help, you know, by not asking them. And so that's kind of just my approach to the world. So we started going out and raising money, and you know, I wasn't talking about a lot of money. It was $300 to send a kid to camp, you know, at that point. That's about $650 to $700 now. But so we started these fundraising events, and we now have, over the last 7 years, we've sent 315 kids to the summer music of their choice anywhere in the United States. And that goes from, you know, New York to California and everything in between. The whole idea is that we're going to give the students an instrument, but more importantly, we're going to surround them with musical opportunities for the next 7 years of their elementary, middle school, and high school career. And hopefully we prepare them for college. And the worst case scenario is they don't go to college and they just gained a love of music and they're a music maker for a lifetime and they can play for their own enjoyment. Or things get really tough, go down on the plaza, open up your case, put your hat out, play some tunes, and make enough money to buy some groceries. I mean, and believe it or not, I mean, that's real. We have one girl at Washington High School. It was so neat to see. Her name's Marie, and ran across her when we took the bass player for Beyonce to her school to talk to them. And this girl got up, played saxophone, and I noticed she didn't have a saxophone that was very good. And so I said, "Is that yours?" "No, I never owned mine. This is the school's. I don't have one." Well, we gave her a saxophone. Well, 2 years later, I was looking at her Instagram, you know, because sometimes I'll follow the kids that we help, see what they're doing. And she had a video of her standing out in front of the Dollar General store playing her saxophone to make money. And I thought, it's happening. It's happening. This is so exciting, you know? So I think that's our overall goal. You know, and I hear a funny story about that too. So about 2 weeks later, her dad brought the saxophone in to get it repaired. And he said, I said, "Well, how's Marie doing?" I saw her playing out in front of the Dollar General store. And he said, "Yeah, that's actually how we broke the saxophone. Somebody put a $20 bill in the case and the wind blew it out. And she started to chase it and dropped her saxophone." So we were able to repair the saxophone and it was all good, but that was just kind of a funny story that happened. So I said, that's why they put change in the case too. So it holds the bills down. And I know Chantel probably knows that gig well. So.
Have you heard, and it's, you know, I know you're only 10 years in, but have you heard back from families or kids where this really had an impact or changed the trajectory of their school experience?
Yeah, all the time. But the thing is, and I told Carrie this when we founded it, I said, "Carrie, we won't really know the full extent of this program for 14 years. And that's 7 years of elementary, middle, and high school from 4th grade to 12th. That's 4 years of college and maybe a post degree. And then we have a student, you know, 12 to 14 years, they're getting out and they're becoming a music teacher. So we're 2 years away from really beginning to see a wave of these students exit education and enter public schools and potentially teaching. But yeah, we hear from parents all the time, and I encourage that. It's so much fun. I get videos from moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas saying, you know, "Thank you so much." And it's really provided this place for this family to be so incredible too. We just had a really interesting, fun story. On 2 Saturdays ago, we did our kickoff on Fox 4. And we invite kids to come back every year for the kickoff and play on air. And what they don't know when they come is we're always looking at their instrument. And if they don't have a very good instrument when they show up, or they've got a beginning instrument and they're going into middle school and they went to music camp, we will give them an upgraded, better instrument so that they can continue to progress. So there's a little girl, and her name was Aria, and her dad, Luis, was with her, and they came in last Saturday at 7 in the morning or 2 Saturdays ago to do the kickoff. Some of you may have saw her on TV. She played for the camera. No idea she was going to get anything. She was simply there to say thank you and talk about Band of Angels. And we presented her. She's a student at Sumner Academy. We presented her with what would be about a $4,000 violin to be able to get all the way through to high school and be able to audition for college. And so her dad, Luis, that's not the best part of the story. Her dad, Luis, was setting off to the side, and I said, Luis, what size t-shirt do you wear? I want to get you a t-shirt. And he said, and he spoke broken English. He's Hispanic, didn't speak very good English. He says, XL. And I said, okay. And he goes, well, wait. And he goes, and he grabs his cell phone. And, you know, on your lock screen on your phone, what do? You put one of your most important pictures, right? And he holds his phone up to me, and it was him and Adia wearing Band of Angels t-shirts that they had gotten as volunteers at our gala fundraising event. They came to serve food, to say thank you and give back. And that was what he had on his home screen. So like this has gone so much further than just an instrument in a hand. It is an opportunity that to that guy, that was probably like the father-daughter dance that you get to go to with your little girl in 6th grade, you know, and that was a moment that he really cherished. And I thought, gosh, you know, how cool that we got to be a part of that. So I love that. Love that.
That is awesome. You know, in this year of adapting and continuing your legacy of adapting, you know, Art That Blows is having to adapt to this year. What does that look like, and how what are the lessons you're learning as you make that transition?
Yeah, well, first lesson, I'm scared to death. I don't know what to do. I've never had a situation where I don't have a product to sell. I've always had a fundraising event where it's a tangible thing where people could go to sell, and I don't have that this year, and so it's very scary, but we are pivoting. We are going to do an online version of it. It's going to be virtual through Lightstream, and it will be streamed on Facebook. And then people can sign in. We had already transitioned to doing virtual fundraising with the thing where you can go to an event and you can be bidding on your cell phone. Well, that can still happen whether you're setting in a venue or you're setting at home. We had also trademarked the name Art That Blows and purchased the domain name artthatblows.com when we came up with the name for the fundraiser. So we will be pushing everybody to artthatblows.com. If you go to there right now, by the way, we have this group called the Rock Stars. And Maddie Carr, our own Maddie Carr on the call, is one of the rock stars this year. And if you go to artthatblows.com and click on donations, you'll see Maddie rocking a cello, and you can make donations directly to Maddie. So we are tying in the friend raising, but taking it virtual this year. And we did a photo shoot with Maddie where we're pushing out 4 different photos. You probably saw hers on LinkedIn. If you didn't, you should look her up. But that's how we're driving traffic to Art That Blows. Then Art That Blows itself will look like there are 4 Hallmark artists that are keepsakes, ornament artists who are creating pieces of art for it. They will be showing and talking about their art live on the live stream. And then we'll be auctioning that. That'll be up for bid on the auction site. And then we've already had 3 students come in, actually 4, a brother and sister team, and then a young woman from Hickman Mills, and a young man that we gave a trumpet to from Martin City Middle School, who's going to be going to Grandview High School this year. We've already filmed videos with them. We will be playing the video of them talking about their experience in music and what this has meant to them and their family. And then we're going to bring them on live, and they're going to play a song. That's the last piece that I'm really scared about because there's some logistics there. But so, you know, we're doing what we can. Is this going to work? I don't know. But the truth is, I have not looked at this as a moneymaker for this year as much as I have a branding opportunity and to continue to put Band of Angels in front of people. If we make, you know, if we were to be able to come out of this thing with $10,000 or $12,000, I would think it, and we would typically do about 40,000 at the event net profit. If we come out of it with 10, I'm going to be elated because not only did we do 10, but we got this Rockstar program going this year. The social media buzz around that has been crazy, and it's just going really, really well. And so we're just trying to, it's kind of a combination of having assets that we were going to use for an in-person event and transitioning those to virtual. And luckily, kind of the strategy that we employed early on, it all kind of flowed together. So I think it'll be great. I think you should all come. And it's free.
Forward to it. Yep.
Free.
I've unmuted Mary. I want to go back and hit some questions and comments here. Mary, I know you have a question.
I always have a question, but that question is old now, so I haven't.
I think it's still, well, you can do any of them.
So because I'm in KCK, I'm always excited to hear people give back in the Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County community, because we are usually last on the list. But I had a great comment when you were talking about supporting band camps. I got a little teary-eyed. I wanted to make sure I didn't lose my lashes or anything, but because it's so important. What do you, just from everything you and your family have done all these years, what's one of those big highs that you just see those kids light up for you? How do you keep from just doing that all day, all night in your sleep and stay at that level all the time? I love the stories that you share. I'd love to kind of get that feel of, what does that really do for you to see those kids' eyes light up? And yes, I do have Sumner graduates, and my son was drum major last year. Now he's at Rockhurst.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. We love Sumner, and believe it or not, this last year was the first year that I've gotten to go to Sumner. And we took Beyonce's tenor sax player to Sumner last year and let her talk to the kids. But first of all, Mary, I love you too, because you're so animated and you've been clapping and jumping around as things have been going. So you've been really fun to watch on this thing. I don't come down from it, to be honest with you. I will tell you that it's been a little weird because I think everybody loves accolades, but I really wasn't prepared for the emotional level of the accolades that people thrust upon you. And so I'm a crier, as anybody who's been to any of our events knows, and it's usually difficult for me to hold it together, but I'm getting better at it. But it's just so cool. It's totally changed the culture of our company. So the culture of our company now is that people expect to have people coming in to pick up instruments. We try very hard to get everybody in the store involved in that process. And that took a little time to get going. But for me, my dad was a Rotarian. I've been a 25-year Rotarian. The motto of Rotary is service above self. And I that might sound corny in today's world to say that, but that is truly how I was kind of brought up. And I think it's so important. And I think it's a piece of entrepreneurism that sometimes we miss. We want to be socially conscious, but we're also looking for the big $1 million exit. And so I just feel super blessed to be able to do this. It's just so neat to see the smiles, and it's really life-changing to see the tears. I'll tell you, do I have time to tell another story, a quick story? Okay, so this is really when the culture shift happened at Meyer Music for this, and not only me being changed by this, but everybody else was too. There was a little boy that came in to Blue Springs to our store, and he was from Hickman Mills, and his mom walked in, and this was real early on in the process, and our Blue Springs location hadn't really bought into this concept of giving this away for free, right? But my brother, Tom, had, and he had been at Hickman Mills the night before doing a rental night, and exactly that scenario that I told you about presented itself. This little boy's mother was a single mother. This little boy's father was in prison. And they did not have the money to do a music instrument. So my brother politely told them, that he wasn't able to help them with it, but that we had this program. And it was funny to me because he didn't really buy into the program 100% yet either. But that moment he goes, well, we got this program. And so you might come to our store and we can see if we can get something for you. Well, she drove over from Hickman Mills to Blue Springs and walks in with the little boy and said, I talked to Tom Meyer at Hickman Mills last night and he said that you guys might be able to help us get a trumpet, that you had some program that you do because we couldn't rent one. And so at that point, I happened to be there, which is odd because I wasn't normally there, but I happened to be there. And I said, oh, okay, well, thank you for coming in. And it was still pretty new. And I said, Linda, can you pull up, Linda's worked for us for 49 years. I said, Linda, can you pull up the application on the internet and print it off so we can have them fill it out? And I said, Tom, do we have any trumpets around here? He said, yeah, I think we've got one downstairs. So I went downstairs and I walked into my sister-in-law, Susan, Tom's wife, and I said, Susan, there's a little boy upstairs who we're going to give a trumpet to through band of angels. We have a trumpet mouthpiece down here. And she's like, well, yeah, I think we do. Let me grab one. And then I grabbed the trumpet and it was still fingerprinted and hadn't been wiped down and cleaned and everything. And so I walked over to Jennifer and I said, Jennifer, there's a little boy upstairs we're going to give this trumpet to for band of angels. You think you can clean this up real quick? And she's like, oh, yeah. And she grabs the vacuum and is vacuuming out the case. And she says, Sean, you wipe it down, you clean it up. And then Susan comes in and says, I found the mouthpiece, and we're piecing this thing together. And then we go back upstairs and we present him with the trumpet, and the mother was very grateful, and the kid was super excited. And we're all standing there, and it was like the light bulb went on for the rest of the company at that moment. They got it. This is what we're doing. And so they leave, and we never had read the application. We didn't even know what the story was because on the application they have to write a story. And the story was that this little kid not only was from a single mother and a father in prison, but he was also a cancer survivor and had like 4 cancer surgeries from the time he was 4 to 8, and so it was just that moment where everybody in the company surrounded this kid and like, we are going to help you. And it was so cool because the light bulb went on for them. And from that point forward, everybody in the place was all in. I took the application around and I read the story to everybody in the store, and they all got it at that moment. And we got it in Overland Park. And so I think one of the greatest joys, back to your original question, what is that feeling for you? The feeling for me now is really awesome when I see a parent excited or a grandparent who is raising a grandchild. But the better thing for me is I can't tell you how many times I've had employees call me and they've said, I was in Hy-Vee standing in line and the guy saw my shirt and thanked me for what we do. And I just want to tell you that I feel so good coming to work because of what we do. And that's bigger than all of it right there. I think that's just so cool. So it's gone full circle.
Wow. I'm blown away by that last story, and Mary's crying. It's making me want to cry.
Well, I'm going to wrap up with one really good story, so don't let me forget it at the end.
Well, let's go ahead and do that. And let's see if they have any other. I'm going to unmute all. If anybody has any more comments or questions, jump in now.
Hey, Mike. Our family's been around music for around your company for a lot of years. Our son was a percussionist from middle school all the way, through graduation in high school, and going down there to the band extravaganza was like an every year thing all the way through high school, so we could see in the background, you could see the Meyer's music sign.
There you go, branding.
Yeah.
That's my brother. That's my brother right there.
Sitting back there. But the big story was we had a similar event happen at your Overland Park store. We had my son's, he transitioned from drum to the marimba. Mm-hmm. And so we had this drum set sitting around in the basement. And I'm like, Hank, what do you want to do with that? And he's like, I don't know. I said, well, let's donate it. So we went to the Overland Park store and said, well, we've got a drum set. Does anybody need it? And the woman that was there, she goes, I don't know, let's think about it. And I said, all right. So we left. My wife and I left. And then I don't think we made it home. And they said, oh, yeah, we've got somebody that needs it. And I went, all right. So we loaded that whole thing into our car and drove it back to the store. And the mom and the son were there.
Oh. Yeah, so you're a crier too, Kent, and I feel
you know, I get well, whenever you get a that happy look, that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, I know how you feel, and it made me think of another story that was similar to this. You know, it's bigger than you, and I love that our employees would take the time to call you back that fast, and that somebody happened to come in, and I mean that is such a cool story. So you know, we want, our goal is to try and get as many people involved in this process as we can. You know, I see lots of people and I get lots of stories and I hear lots of things, but most people don't get to see it as much as I do. So I'm just thrilled that you were able to do that. So you know, if you want to learn more about Band of Angels, you can go to our YouTube channel, and there are some really great videos. There's one on there called Martha's Clarinet Finds Maria, that I think will tell you, it was literally one of the stories that started Band of Angels, and it's just a really great story. Martha was the first lady that really brought in an instrument before we ever even started Band of Angels, and we didn't have Band of Angels, but I took her clarinet. And so if you get a chance and you want to dial that up on YouTube, that would be great. The other one though that I wanted to share was I got a call from a parent, or we got an application about 3 weeks ago. And let me see if I can put this up where you can see this. Let's see here. Okay. So you can see the guy, and he's holding a cello. And that's Elijah. And so we got this application. And on the application, we kind of have our whole strategy for Band of Angels is really kind of a Habitat for Humanity model. And that is that they need to put in a little bit of effort and work to be able to get to the instrument. So they would have gone to the school, they would have tried to rent something, couldn't get it. Director tells them about Band of Angels, they go to the website, they fill out the application, they go back to the director signs off on that application and gives them their information to put in. They write a parent story, they write a student story to tell us who they are, and then they submit that to us. And by the time they've done all these things, they've done about 4 or 5 steps. So there's no money, but it's taken some effort. And I think that's really been an important piece. We wanted to make sure that the people felt a buy-in to it. Well, this was a cello that this young man, they had been renting a cello, and the cello, not from us, had gotten repossessed. And so the kid was going to have to stop playing in orchestra. So this is the story from the dad. Elijah and Isabel's mother and I split up in 2010. Co-parenting afterwards has been rather pleasant as we respect the boundaries of our parenting plan. While initially it caused stressors, the kids have adapted and the split has been a positive change. I'm a disabled Iraq veteran, which brings a long list of issues, both mental and physical. Elijah has been witness to and affected by some of these issues. I was also abused from the age of 5 to 13 at the hands of my stepfather. This information matters because my illnesses dominate the environment and affect Elijah on a constant basis. While I've always been around, I've kept Elijah at arm's length for fear of passing on my issues. Eli is talented in a way that I don't understand, and I'm curious to see how far he'll go with music. I understand the value of music, not by knowing, but by its absence in my own life. Eli is happy when he's playing, most notably when he's part of the orchestra and when he's with his peers. It may be music to Eli, but it's therapy to me. And I think that just was one of the greatest stories that I've had recently of the far-reaching things that this has had, far beyond just giving an instrument to somebody. So, if you know anybody who loves causes and wants to donate either an instrument or financially, we could sure use it, and it's a great opportunity. And I love that I've gotten to share this story. It's rare that I get to share both the Meyer Music side of the world and the Band of Angels side of the world, and kind of the whole story. But hopefully it was not boring, and you guys enjoyed it. And I just want to thank you for listening.
Mike, this has been inspiring. It's been educational. There are lessons through that journey of Meyer Music and now Band of Angels that I think any business leader, community leader can take something from and apply to what they do and to how to make a difference in the community. And I love what you're doing, and excited to see Rockstar Maddie rock this show up in about a month, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, you should see a variety. There's 18 rock stars that are part of the group right now, and if you know somebody who would be a good rock star, our rock stars was a shot at trying to connect with the millennial 25 to 40-year-old group of Kansas Cityans who want to be out there, so it's a little unnerving for them to step up. Although Maddie, I think she has a life as like America's Next Top Model. If the axe throwing doesn't work out, I'm just saying she stood up there like a champ and did the photo shoot. But it's just a really neat way to get involved and creative way. I want to credit a gentleman named Edgar Palacios in Kansas City for coming up with the idea. Edgar, it was his brainchild. He was on our board for a little while. And so I can't take credit for it, but I'm super grateful for all the people that are participating. And hopefully you'll see a lot more of their pictures on your Instagram.
Well, thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for everybody's questions today. The questions were great, and that there was a lot to learn today. And I really appreciate your authenticity and everything you had to say, Mike. It was awesome.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.